First up is Twisters, which is a sequel to the 1996 action blockbuster Twister. Now, it turns out I had never actually seen the entirety of the original film, so I went and watched it in preparation for this. That may have been unnecessary because you do not have to have seen Twister in order for Twisters to make sense, for better or for worse. There are certainly some light references and Easter eggs that you'll pick up on in Twisters if you've seen the first, but for the most part, it really just has to do with the sort of scientific equipment and some of the storm and weather nomenclature, but aside from that, you can go in pretty clean slate to Twisters. It stars Glenn Powell and Daisy Edgar Jones. Both of them play scientist/meteorologist adjacent folks. Glenn Powell ends up being a sort of influencer, like YouTuber type, and Daisy Edgar Jones is a more serious person. The cast also has Anthony Ramos, Brandon Perea, Kiernan Shipka, Sasha Lane, Katie O'Brien, Daryl McCormick, Maura Tierney, Harry Haddon-Patton, and also David Corenswet, who is going to be the new Superman. And when he came on screen, the person I was sitting next to and I were like, is that him? It's kind of surprising because he's not in any of the marketing for this, and you think like with him being the next Superman, they'd lean on that, but maybe they didn't want to detract from Daisy Edgar Jones and Glenn Powell. So this film is basically the same plot as the last one, and again, like I said, you don't have to have seen the last one for it to make sense, but I hope this is not a major spoiler. It is also in the trailers, but we're centering around these two storm chasers, and Oklahoma is experiencing more tornadoes than ever before, and they both have different reasons for being there, but then they come together in the end. Honestly, the majority of the movie is just chasing tornadoes, and if you are willing to overlook the kind of sheer stupidity that is involved in this action, and the same goes for the first film. You know, I think because it's all in the name of science, you know, you're supposed to overlook it and be like, yes, this is necessary. And actually, I will say Twisters probably actually gives the characters slightly grander motivations for being storm chasers than the original Twister did. But if you're going to see this, just go because you're going to see an action blockbuster. And I think it did a good job of capturing that sort of summer blockbuster popcorn eating thing. You know, I saw it in IMAX. It was loud. Everything was shaking, but you want it to be. You know, I think Glenn Powell and Daisy Edgar Jones are perfectly pleasant in their roles. You know, Glenn Powell is basically playing Glenn Powell in the last however many roles he's played, but with a little bit of a twang in this. And, you know, it's one of those things where I've said this before, and this came up when we were discussing Fly Me to the Moon, but it's not to say that scientists cannot be as good looking as the Hollywood actors who get cast as them. Like, I don't want to knock scientists, but sometimes the people they choose to cast, and then when they give them just such mumbo jumbo scientific jargon, I'm like, please adjust, because I don't believe it when Glenn Powell is spewing all this stuff about EF5s and blah, 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 and the pressure systems and this and that. You know, it's just, it makes it even harder to suspend your disbelief. I believe it a little bit more out of Daisy Edgar Jones, but also because she's playing a more serious character versus this like Wild Westy cowboy, you know, tornado wrangler character. But, you know, again, overall, it's a disaster film. It has two pretty decent leads. You know, I generally like the folks in the supporting cast. They aren't given a ton to do. You know, their characters are pretty one-dimensional, but given the, you know, what's going on and all the stuff they're juggling, like, I didn't expect more out of this. I think that's the most important thing. Like, I didn't have the highest expectations going into this. I don't have the nostalgia for Twister, so I didn't feel anything was missing in terms of being like, oh no, I wanted more references to the original. I thought it was a nicely balanced film. You know, I think my only note is it's a little bit long. You could have shaved about like 20 minutes off of it. I gotta shout out, Lee Isaac Chung is the director of this, and he directed Minari, which is a film that I think is so beautiful and amazing and kind of intimate, and then this one is kind of, I don't want to say it's the opposite of intimate. He tries to pepper in, you know, character moments here and there. You can feel studio notes all over this film. I think the thing that he brings to it the most is like the cinematography and appreciation for rural America, because Minari also takes place on a small farm, and it's about a family, and this is kind of an ode also to the people who are affected by these tornadoes, and it shows the impact of them on a larger scale versus Twister, let's say, which was showing it more about like, you know, Helen Hunt's character. Anyway, like I said, I was pleasantly surprised because I didn't go with the highest of expectations, but, you know, I think if you are looking for a summer blockbuster, this is a pretty dang good choice. I'm going to give it a 3.9 out of 5. The other film I have is My Spy, The Eternal City, and this is the sequel to the film My Spy, which stars Dave Bautista and Chloe Coleman. And Dave Bautista, I actually don't remember a lot about My Spy. I know Dave Bautista is like a CIA agent, and I can't remember how he gets connected or involved with Chloe Coleman's family, but, you know, Chloe Coleman is a now teenager. Dave Bautista is now her not stepdad, but her parental figure. He is still in the CIA, but he is out of the field, but is training her. Anyway, I remember the first My Spy film being pleasant enough. I don't actually remember much from it. I don't remember it being bad, but perhaps I purged it from my memory. I am not the target audience for this. And having seen My Spy: The Eternal City, I am not sure who the target audience for this is supposed to be at this point. And I know some of it is because Chloe Coleman has aged up a little bit. She's playing a teenager, and so there's different kind of like emotions at play. There's first crushes and peer pressure, and also like partying. That was like, y'all are a little young for partying. The conceit of this one is that her middle school, high school choir gets sent to Europe on a choir tour, and Dave Bautista goes along as a chaperone. And then, of course, somehow international espionage-esque things get involved, and there's a side mission and all this stuff. It also stars Kristen Schaal, Ken Jeong, Craig Robinson, Flula Borg, and Anna Faris. And oh man, I really love Dave Bautista. I think Chloe Coleman is a wonderful up-and-coming actress. I don't know what happened with this movie. So, like I said, I'm not sure who it's for, because the material is starting to, I don't want to say it's not mature per se, but like I said, it's not for little kids anymore, because you do have these high school kids like partying effectively or trying to party. And, the humor is trying to be from Dave Bautista being the cool chaperone or trying to impress or not embarrass Chloe Coleman's character. But then you've got all this action stuff, which, fine, whatever, that was plug and play. But then some of the jokes are like off-kilter adult jokes. There's like weird makeout jokes, and it also, I'm sorry to say, for a film that has some pretty funny people in it, was not that funny. I think some of it's just because it is trying to take itself too seriously, and it's not good at balancing like the absurdity of certain moments with, I think actually the best humor comes from the dynamic between Chloe Coleman and Dave Bautista's characters as just like petulant teen and, father figure. But then it just goes all over the board. The action is, like I said, fine, whatever. There is also, this is a strange note, but there is so much time spent on the choir parts and like the singing. And this movie is not a particularly short movie, especially in theory for one aimed at, let's say, younger audiences, right? Like not young audiences, but I found myself struggling attention span wise. It's an hour and 51 minutes. And I was just like, why? What is the choir part of this adding? Is somebody weirdly religious or musically inclined and really wants to hear this part? And it's not like any of the main people in it are secretly singers or trying to get like their careers off the ground, as far as I know, because the focus is on, communal singing. It's not like a solo is given to one character. You're like, oh, I get it. This is your soundtrack moment, or this is like your secondary career, whatever it is. So it was borderline distracting, and also like just get to the point. Like it was totally filler. It didn't advance anything. I think a lot of stuff didn't advance anything. It's a shame, because I really do like the actors involved in this film, but there's so much convolution happening. Like there was a reference to something that happened in the first one and like a callback, and I was like, the first one is not memorable enough to allow you to do a callback. I'm sorry, you have to assume people are going to this fresh. It's out streaming on Amazon Prime, which is, I think, the best scenario for this, because if you feel truly compelled to watch it, like at least you don't have to leave the comfort of your home. But unfortunately, I am only going to give it a 2.3 out of 5.